There we go. Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 2022 Jupyter Community Call. My name's Isabella, for anyone who hasn't met me. I'm going to be hosting today. Thank you for posting the agenda in the chat again. Yay! We will be going through that through the whole time. Oh boy, here we go. Before we get started, though, I have to say my usual little things, which are one, right? This call is recorded. You probably heard that if I did it right. Yes, I did. And then two, this is a Jupyter community event. We're held to the Jupyter community's code of conduct. That includes me if that ever comes up. You can find it anytime at jupyter.org/conduct. We confirmed that does still work last call, so thank you for that again. And third, if I ever mispronounce your name, let me know. I'm trying to get name pronunciation omnipotence, and you can help me along the way. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get started. If you haven't been here before, we're going to follow kind of the order of the agenda in this call, meaning that we're here, to kind of celebrate, talk anything about Jupyter, talk about what's happening in the ecosystem possibly, and just, yeah, get excited about what's happening. It looks like we already have some things going, but people are typing. So yeah, let's take a moment. What we're going to start with first are the short reports, celebrations, and shout outs. So these are all things that maybe don't require further discussion, though we do have time for it today. And Darian, you're first on the list if you're ready to speak, but if you're still typing, sorry.
Sure. No, one is just an announcement that the third branch of the new Jupyter governance is in a PR that's currently being voted on, and the voting period ends on Friday. So what this means for most people is not very much, but if you are involved in a sub-project and you are in the named team, the council for that sub-project, then you could start considering either yourself or nominating someone else from your council to represent your sub-project in the new software steering council as it starts to come online. And this process has been in the works for kind of a long time. The first piece of it was the Jupyter Distinguished Contributors, which we started doing, I guess, over a year and a half ago at this point. And then the next was the Software Steering Council, which in theory passed, but we first needed to ramp up individual sub-project councils before we can start naming people for the project-wide thing. Now the Software Steering Council is meant to be a place where representatives from the different Jupyter sub-projects have regular conversations, and they will be the body that votes on Jupyter enhancement proposals. And they will be basically in cross communication regularly to make sure different parts of the project are aware of each other and are doing things somewhat in tandem. Obviously, like projects do their own sort of road mapping and feature selection and all that, but there still needs to be communication. So that's that update. I also added a short other update, which is Lumino 2. If you don't know, Lumino is the UI framework that, I guess framework's the wrong word. It's a UI library that Jupyter Lab and Notebook V7 are built with. It's a high performance library that offers some things that are difficult to do in a desktop-like web browser in a performant way, having many-to-one signaling, having a messaging apparatus to send, say, resize events all the way down the tree of components that your application might be built of. So one of the simplest ways to describe what makes Lumino different than some other tool is, imagine you're in Jupyter Lab, you have a file browser on the left-hand side, and you have your main area on the right-hand side, and you grab that little line that separates them and you drag it back and forth. all the components resize sort of performantly. And that's a very difficult thing to do with many libraries, because many libraries will have to individually know all the things beneath them and propagate that downward. Whereas with Lumino, that's sort of built in. There's a messaging system that sends resized messages up and down without client code needing to necessarily intervene or do anything about it. And for a very long time, we've been using Lumino 1.x. It is a pretty stable library. We don't change it that much, but because we have Jupyter Lab 4 and Notebook 7 coming out, it seems like a good time to do a bunch of technical debt catch up and maintenance and release Lumino 2 so that we can upgrade the version of TypeScript that compiles on, so that we can remove some deprecated code, and so that we could add potential deprecation warnings for things we want to do in a future version, say Lumino 3 along with Jupyter Lab 5 or something. So if you're interested in the UI library that the Jupyter frontends use, you can follow that PR. I'm still working on it. I'm not the only one. And that's it. Thanks.
Those were really big updates. Thank you. Like big questions, but maybe we'll circle back to that since we have some other things on the short report. So thank you, Darian. Okay. Roland, I think you're next.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to remind everybody that the security sub-project developed a policy to require all project developers, Jupyter project developers, to turn on two-factor authentication on GitHub by October 1st. Actually, before that, much before that. But the good news is that most sub-projects look like they're pretty close to having everybody who's a participant have 2FA turned on. I think the biggest project that had the most people who did not have 2FA turned on was Jupyter Lab, and I believe that Rick or Matthias were going to be reaching out to that project to try to clear that up. So again, by the 1st, which is going to be here in a few days, if you don't have 2FA turned on GitHub, please do that. Thanks.
Great. No, thanks for reminding everyone, since we have a lot of different people here. And okay, next on the list, we have Nick. I think.
Sorry, I'm here. I was just on mute. What did I put down first? I put two things down, and I don't remember the order that I put them in. Okay, so the first one is, it's been a long time coming, but with all those upgrades that have been occurring over the while for Jupyter Lab 2 and various other things, the Voila project, which is an official Jupyter sub-project, and it's kind of the best guess that we have for actually making deployable, data-driven, single kernel per user dashboards, is inching closer to working with all those Jupyter Lab things, which is great. For the longest time, it was using the old require.js stuff, which was great if you had old require.js stuff. But with Notebook 7 and Jupyter Lab 4 coming out in the near term, that's going to be the only reason that you would want to continue to support those. So this new pull means that you'd be able to manage all your stuff inside of pip installable packages. It's not going to go talk to require.js and CDN.js and unpackage.js and all those other command and control delivery mechanisms. So that's a very exciting thing for a lot of folk that have been asking for dashboards for a long time. And we're like, well, Voila is great, but you have to do special support things to do it. And it's probably just going to work better now. And then the shtick on top of that is we should be able to adapt that for Jupyter Lite. So that's really getting to something where there is no deployment. You just push a web page up and it talks to an existing API, or it talks to an existing GraphQL endpoint or something like that. And you get this full kernel-based experience without all the Jupyter Chrome. So, yeah. That is all.
No, that is all. Okay. I feel like that's the ending of many of your shares, and I never feel that is all. But no, that's awesome. Thank you.
Doing that work. I'm just pointing it out as something that is of general interest to the community.
Right, right. Well, thank you. I think we'll be circling back to you, but next on the list we have Frederic. This also sounds like a big announcement. Things are happening.
Hey guys, I hope you are hearing me well because I have internet connection trouble today, but it's just to announce that we have released the Jupyter 3.4.4 patch version, and for people interested, you can have a look to the changelog. So nothing major, it's a patch release, and we are working hard to start 4.0 beta. So most thing coming hopefully very soon.
Hooray! Wonderful. Thanks for letting us know. I'm next on the short reports. I just realized I haven't mentioned it in a while. We still have Jupyter Lab accessibility calls happening. We will have one this week. So it will be tomorrow, 10:15 a.m. Pacific, though if you look on the community calendar, it'll turn it to your time zone nice and easy. So I'd recommend doing that. Even though that's a Jupyter Lab accessibility call, I think it's our main touch point for like accessibility meetings in general across the project. So we're definitely open to anyone who wants to be there. Just putting that on record again in case anyone might not have heard of it and happens to listen to this recording. So yeah, you can see me again in a little over 24 hours if you really want to. How exciting, I know, but great. Next, we're going back to Nick for another announcement.
Thanks, Isabella. So the other piece on there is we finally were able to work the Jupyter Lite front end stuff into the iPi widgets docs. So iPi widgets 8 is coming out soon. It's already in release candidate and brings with it a bunch of nice new features. And it's hidden under the latest place in the iPi widgets docs, but you can try out all the new stuff in there, and you can try it out right in that browser without spending any Google Cloud credits or whatever on Binder. So that is all. I also didn't do any of that work. That was all Jason and the team over on the iPad Widgets repo.
Wow, this is it's always funny to me. The short reports always end up being really exciting to me and leaving me with a lot of questions. Congrats on all the releases, y'all, or just all the kind of culmination of work like with governance or security recommendations. That's really awesome to see. Sometimes it's a long time coming, but it's cool to see all of these things at a point where we can celebrate, even if it is a patch release of something and not a major, but we've got a nice mix going on. Awesome. I am, though, going to be quiet for a few seconds and let you contemplate if there's any more announcements, but this was really great. Okay. Well, we can always circle back if you all think of anything, because we still have an empty agenda for the moment, though I certainly have ideas of rabbit holes to drag you all down if we need it. I'm similarly, though, going to open it up. Does anyone have something longer they want to share or bring up a discussion from the, what are we saying, from the short reports? That would also be great. Does anyone have questions about what people said there? Okay, well, in that case, I think what I'm going to do is be kind of selfish and ask y'all, you know, I mentioned right before we started this call that I've been thinking I need to do some outreach because I'm communicating to a lot of the same groups for these meetings. And so maybe trying to get some different shares in, but that's going to take some effort from me, which is fine. But can I ask, what are like your favorite things that happen at community calls? Like, what are your best community call memories? So I can see like what kind of stuff you like to have here. And this will be silence until someone decides to say something.
Someone likes pie. Yeah, that pie's good. I'm kind of torn because like I really like seeing products that people are building on top of the Jupyter stuff, but it's such a fine balance, and you really have to be in the right place for it not to just be a marketing pitch, because that is obnoxious, and I don't care how many ISO certifications you have and how big your customer list is. Like, are you doing cool stuff with Jupyter and getting paid? And I want to listen to that stuff all day long, because that's why we have a downstream friendly licensing regime. That's why we make it easy to extend every part of the architecture. But again, it's hard to, like, I don't think you want to be asking for people's press releases, right? Like, that's not cool. Or, I mean, that's cool if that's what you're into, but I don't think that's what this community call is about. But I do think it is important for people to know that's about, it's about that, right? Like, open source, the way that Jupyter does open source is not about, we're not trying to protect anything, in Jupyter so that the people that build Jupyter get paid, right? Like, that's not why it's set up that way. So it's not like Redis and Mongo and all those other things where you've got the corporate entity behind it. So because of that, other companies can build stuff on top of it. And I love hearing more about that. So I don't know if there's more. There isn't really a place on like Discourse for, there's show and tell, but there isn't like, hey, we're corporate entities that support Jupyter, and oh yeah, here's this thing that we build on top of Jupyter. I don't know.
No, that's a good point, because I figured people might say demos more generally, but that's interesting to think the specific of like what are the things people are building in a different direction, right? Not just additive, not just what work people are doing, but what they are building fully on top of is really interesting. We also have Pi in the list. I'm assuming that there's not any further comment there, though. You are welcome to talk more about Pi if you want. Make this community call what you want it to be immediately, but you don't have to. So, for example, oh no, was someone going to speak? I can't tell. No. Okay.
Some of the thematic conversations that aren't strictly on topic have been really interesting, and so maybe there is a point to having a theme of the month, like that we're going to talk about today, or you could toss out, here's a library that we'd like to see some demos of, or have people propose that, or here's a data set, do some cool Jupyter junk with it. And even if it was like, because we never actually do lightning talks, right? The structure is you get 1 minute or you get 10 minutes, but we've never really done like the 5 minute, like the express call out of the 5 minute. And maybe that would be less scary for people, of just like, I don't show off a whole package. It's just here's the top of one notebook, or more practically, here's the bottom of one notebook, right, where I made something cool happen. Okay, on to the next person.
Okay, no, that's a good point too. I know, for example, one of my favorite things, is things working? In community calls is actually like, I like seeing what people are doing, like what kind of research, even if they're not necessarily extending Jupyter. That may be my designer bias there, but I really like seeing like what kind of problems are people solving, because I feel like I'm always surprised. I think I have a good scope of what people do with these tools, and then someone shows up and says, actually, I'm doing this thing that's totally different. And that's one of my favorite moments. But those, I think, I don't know how I would find them, right, if I enjoy them for the surprise anyway. But yeah. Cool. I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds again for any of you to decide why you are still coming to these calls, which I'm very grateful, but you're here for a reason, I think, or by an accident. You thought this was a different call. Okay.
I just vote for the lightning talks concept as part of the agenda. I think that would be a welcome addition to the agenda that would, kind of fill in the space between 1 minute and 10 minutes.
No, that's good to know. I didn't that's good feedback. I didn't know that people were necessarily feeling like there were those rigid barriers for time, so that's really good to know. I am also seeing from Simon, live demos are always good, even if they're incomplete. I agree. I think everyone likes going on that adventure, even if it crashes and burns at some point. I really enjoy it still. Cool. And I also see from Darian, I'd like to see a combination of the last thing Nick said and the current thing Isabella is saying. So like a people to report a new thing they learned. Today I learned using Jupyter Notebook recently. That's a good prompt. I know I've kind of sent the prompts out sometimes, but I haven't been sure if it's discouraged people from sharing other things, but worth a try again. Cool. Thank you all. I'm going to write those down when you have a moment of silence to ponder, but then, yeah, we'll move on. Okay, awesome. Thank you for entertaining me on this call, and I will put in some ideas to try and get these shares happening again. These calls typically have ebbed and flowed over the past, what is it, 1.5 years? I don't know, more than a year, in terms of when we get really full agendas and then really quiet agendas, but wonderful. Thank you for the ideas. Bye, Nick. Thank you. Did that inspire anyone else to have something to say? If not, I will come up with more questions or let you go, but just thought I'd propose, since I know this is our first, I think in the last 2 months, this has been the most friendly European time. Some of you I haven't seen in a little while, so. I always feel like I need the Jeopardy theme for these calls, but that's both very, I think, US centric and licensed, but that's what it makes me feel like when we sit here sometimes. Okay. Well, I'm not here to spend all your time this morning. Thank you so much for going on this adventure with me, similar to a live demo, perhaps, but with a little less exciting, like explosions and glitter in the background. But thanks for all these great ideas. And really, this is a great list of short reports and celebrations. It super helps me stay on top of what's happening in the ecosystem and helps me point people in the right direction. I hope it does the same for you. So great. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, Isabella.
Thanks, Isabel.